Absolutely phenomenal morning, guys. This is your Breakfast with the Brand. I am the host, Shaan East, as always, flanked by the phenomenal Bobby Jackson. You ever have one of those mornings? One of those mornings. Like you ever have one of those mornings where it just seems like people aren't people. People aren't people, things aren't things, and it's kind of up in the air or upside down. Listen, that's what I want to talk to you about today. Like, what do you do when you're living kind of like in the eye of the storm? There's a lot of things going on. Nothing is what it appears to be. And you have to make some serious, serious shifts immediately in people, places, and things, right? Because as an entrepreneur, that's probably where a lot of people are consistently in the eye of the perfect storm, being dashed by all sides, being dashed by all sides. People, places, and things are not what they appear to be. That's what I want to talk to you about today, like the entrepreneurial dilemma. Bobby Jackson, that's what we're going to talk about today, the entrepreneurial dilemma. How are you doing, sir?
Absolutely phenomenal. I was writing down adversity introduces a man to himself or a woman to herself. And I thought that that's going to be an interesting topic to dive into.
The entrepreneurial dilemma. Guys, it's super interesting because I am very, very authentic. Like if you haven't picked that up already. Extremely authentic, extremely, transparent. And I want you to understand, like, even on the other side, things are not like the picture of perception, picture of perfection that many people would like to assume or think. If you're trying in your entrepreneurial endeavors, in your business endeavors, in your career endeavors, if you're trying to escape uncertainty or conflict, let me tell you something. Like, there is no escape for that. There is no escape. Like, you're not going to find the safe ground where conflict does not exist, where business and reality isn't hostile or volatile. Like, that does not exist. What you're looking for many times, that picture of nirvana, it just doesn't exist. And that's why, Bobby, that's why people they say to themselves, well, if I can make $10,000 a month, then that'll be 6 figures a year, and then everything will settle down. And then they get to 10 figures, or they get to the 6 figures a year, and they realize things aren't perfect yet. Hold on. All right, so maybe if I double this, maybe if I go from $120,000 a year to 250, maybe if I can get to $250,000. As a matter of fact, when I hire this person or hire this person in my business and I'm making $250K, that's when everything will just and it'll all come together and it'll all begin to make sense and nothing will go wrong. But listen, guys, I don't know where you're at in your life. Like, you could say, okay, when I graduate and I finally get the MBA, that's when, because then I'll be able to charge $350K for my services, and the job will see my value, and I'll be able to elevate or get the promotion. And then I'll be able to tuck into the pocket and things will be much more certain, and there will no longer be a hostile or a volatile environment. I want to be honest with you. This is the Breakfast with the Brand, and we'll be right back. Let's grow. There's slow growth, and then there's scale. There's incremental growth, and then there's exponential growth. What I want to talk to you about is adding a zero to you and experiencing exponential scale. Incremental growth says 1 + 1 is 2. Exponential growth says 1 + 0 is 10. Incremental growth says 2 + 2 is 4. Exponential growth says 5 + 0 is 50. Guys, listen, when you add a zero to you, you can add a zero to the marketplace. You can add a zero to the value that you bring. So you can add a zero to your family, add a zero to your legacy. This is what we're talking about. We're not talking about incremental, we're talking about exponential. I always say that business is a spiritual game. Just imagine when you combine your skills, your values, your abilities, your talents to something bigger than you, something greater than you, something like the power of exponential. That is adding a zero. Add a zero to your competence. Add a zero to your confidence. This is about adding a zero. in your life, your value, your industry, and your mission. Let's grow. The reason why I did this and what I do is help leaders to become brands and brand themselves. You train people how to treat you by how you treat yourself. I teach authenticity marketing. If people can take advantage of you, they will in your personal or professional existence.
My biggest takeaway just from day one is you are the brand. I would recommend it to anybody that's really looking to build a personal brand.
Just the brand in general has changed my life. I've grown so much since I've been a part of this.
I see myself in what he does, and I believe in it just as much as I believe in myself.
All right, guys, the entrepreneurial dilemma, entrepreneur's dilemma, chaos, right? Chaos. Let me tell you what chaos looks like. Okay, so chaos looks like you're in the eye of the storm, right? You're in the eye of the storm. You're trying to start your business. You don't know where you're at, really. You don't know what's going on, and you're trying to figure out the sales. And you're trying to figure out the marketing. And you're trying to figure out the different platforms, the different algorithms, the different messaging, the different ideal client profiles. Like, who's the ideal client? Where's the ideal client? Like, ideal client profile. Like, what do they do? Where do they hang out? Like, what do I do? Like, how do I close deals and fulfill services at the same time and pull it all together and talk? What is this systems thing? What do people keep talking about when they say systems and processes? How does that look? Do I write the book? Do I start the YouTube channel? Do I start the blog? It's all confusing. It's all confusing, guys. Listen, I get it. I get it. I understand it 100%. When you begin to hire and deal with different personalities, it becomes even more complex, more uncertain, and more volatile, right? Trust me. Did you ever think, like, when I hire someone, then I'll fix it, because I'll be able to go relax and go on the trip and do the family thing, and all of my problems will be solved. All I have to do is put somebody in the place where I no longer want to be. Trust me. All of that is a myth. All of it is a myth. What business is, and it is a spiritual game, trust me. What business is like, how can I say this? Walking through the terrain. So you're walking through the terrain, if you can think of like a old Western movie, green pasture, dirt road, no houses in sight, right? This is what happens when you're on your job and you say, I'm going to start a business. When you lose your job and you say, I'm going to start a business. It's like Little House on the Prairie, except it's not peaceful or pleasant. You can kind of feel like there's something around, looming in the background, ready to get at you. Like the coyotes. You hear something. You feel something. You know something is coming. You don't know what it is. You can't see it, but you can hear it and you can kind of feel it. That's kind of what it is when you finally leave your job, or you're still in your job and you're like, I need to transition, or 60K or 80K or 120K is just not enough. I need to do something different. And you've heard of this entrepreneurial thing, and you look out into the landscape, and it's like, you look on Facebook and you look on YouTube and you're like, I can do that. I see what Shaan is doing. I can do that. It doesn't look too hard. I can figure this out. Okay, great. So you're looking at this prairie, and in the far distance, it looks like there's a horse. And you need to get on top of something. You need a vehicle, some kind of vehicle. You need something to help you get from A to B, from B to C. Systems, processes, people, sales, marketing, system. It's all the same thing. It's an unquantifiable variable. I'm sorry. There's my education coming in. It's an unquantifiable variable. You can't tell exactly what it is, but you know you need one. Anybody, you understand what I'm saying? Like you don't know exactly what it is, right, Bobby? But you know you need one. You've heard about it. You hear the rumors going on, the murmurings of six figures and people making their yearly income monthly, their monthly income weekly, and their weekly income daily, and touching people and saving lives and being meaningful and all of profitable. What is profit, right? So you start to walk in the direction of this unquantifiable variable. And you begin to realize as you get closer and closer that it begins to take shape. And you realize that what you're looking at is a horse. And you're like, man, if I could just get one of those, I could stop walking. I could go faster. I could find water. I wouldn't have to work so hard. Like I wouldn't have to go to work and clock in every day. Like I might have more money at the end of the month instead of more month at the end of the money. If I could just get on this horse. If I could just tame this horse. If this horse would let me get close. And you notice that the horse sees you. And you're looking at the horse and the horse is looking at you. And the horse looks strong. Muscles, sinew, veins, rippling in the sun. It's an unquantifiable variable. So now you realize, hold on, I'm a man or I'm a woman. And this is a machine. This is a beautiful, powerful machine. Now, if I can tame it, then my problems become so much less if I can get on top of it. However, this is a machine. And each leg is like one of me, if not two. I'm not talking about a mare. I'm not talking about a small horse. I'm talking about a huge, muscle-bound behemoth, like a beast. Something that will take you where you need to go faster than you thought possible. Solve a lot of your problems. That's what business is. It can take you where you want to go. It can solve a lot of your problems. But the thing is, right, it's an unquantifiable variable. So as you get closer to it, it gets further away from you. And you don't want to run it away. But you can't sneak up on it because it already saw you coming. So what do you do? That's the question that a lot of you have. What do I do? Because if you run up on it, it's either going to run away, and Lord forbid it starts to run towards you, or Lord forbid you really get close up on it and it chooses to use one of those legs to earth you, to lift you out into the orbit, because it can easily snap your neck, break your back. And you can't defend you. You can't muscle bound a horse. A horse, it won't happen. I don't care who you are, where you come from. You come from Harlem. You come from the military after 30. It don't make a difference where you come from. You're not going to overpower that force of nature. You're not. It will not happen. Business will break you in half, and so will a horse. So what do you do? That's what we're talking about today, Bobby. What do you do?
This is an interesting question and topic because it takes me to Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn says something I really appreciated about entrepreneurship. He said, when it comes to becoming a millionaire, it's not about what you get. It's about who you become. Ooh. And I thought that was very important, because another thing that I wrote down is that, and this is also from Jim Rohn, he said, things don't get easier, you get better. Mm. And when I think about this situation and I think about the entrepreneurial dilemma, I think each of us on this call right now can imagine a time in our business where we were getting started and struggling to figure things out. And that very same task, if we've been doing it for any amount of time, is a little bit easier. But it's not really easier, we're just better. Our brains can process more of whatever it was doing to the point where it's doing it subconsciously. And in my experience, business is a series of competencies. So many of you all know how I learned them. I learned them with coaching first, or branding first. Then I learned coaching. Then I learned consulting. And then I learned closing, then I learned speaking, then I learned marketing, and so on and so forth. So for me, each of these were difficult when I first got started. Like branding, what is branding? World on Notice. I don't know how to use one of these platforms, and you're telling me to get on all of them. So it was a very interesting experience. So I think one of the ways that I answer this question for myself personally is, what do? You find someone who's already done the level that you're currently at. Because what you can do in those instances is ask them what you should do next. And I think that's one of the most important things that you can ask when you're in the eye of the storm. It's like everything's flying around and everything's going haywire, and you can focus on those things and kind of get pulled into the drama of everything that's going on around you and lose all orientation and then completely miss the mark. You may lose the business. Or you can tower back to home base and say, I can't see anything. I'm out of water. I can barely breathe. There's sand everywhere, so my eyes are covered. And where do I put my next foot? And that's an area I've been in several times in my business. And I got the right answer. I put my foot in the right place, and I got to the next step. So that's how I've been managing in my development.
Very good. I like this answer here, right? Because you can't run it down. The closer you get to it, the further it goes from you. You can't run it down. You can't overpower it with speed or force. Should probably write that down. I'm going somewhere with this. You cannot overpower it with speed or force. So let me state this. I don't know what your unquantifiable variable is, but you all have one. Everybody watching this has an unquantifiable variable. Maybe it's your health. Maybe it's your weight. Maybe it's your education. Maybe it's your occupation. Maybe it's your relationship. Maybe it's your communication. Maybe it's business. We all have one. We all have an unquantifiable variable. In business, it just seems to be like a mare, like a huge thoroughbred, like 320 pounds of pure muscle, or maybe 540, pure force. So I like this answer because you can't run it down. You can't sneak up on it. So you got to find a way to make yourself interesting. And you don't want to threaten it either. So you might want to look to the side. That would probably be one of my first advices. Don't stare potential death in the eyes, because it just might take you as a threat. And that's the last thing you want to happen. So you might want to look to the side. I've seen this happen in ranches where ranchers come on, you've got a stallion, and I'm not going to use the word break, but they do use the word break. I'm not going to use the word break. I'm going to use the word tame or align. And I want you to think of the word power, because you can't force yourself on it, but you can use power. You can use power. Can't use force, can use power. You don't want to stare it dead in the eyes. You definitely don't want to run up on it. If you try to be forceful, you'll scare it away and you'll lose the opportunity. That's the last thing you want to do, is lose the opportunity, right? Everybody wants to do this thing the right way. You want to get the education. You want to do it the right way. You want to go to the job. You want to be accepted. You want to get the promotion. You want to go in the marketplace. You want to get the clients. You want to be able to build the business. Tame is a word. Tame is a word. So you might want to look to the side. So it doesn't really understand or know your full intentions yet. You don't want to make your full intentions known yet until you know whether it's actually consolable or alignable, or if it's tameable, because it might not be. But if you can make yourself non-threatening, if you can serve, if you can give, if you have something of value that can be seen as desirable, if you can pique the curiosity, then you just might attract. You just might attract. If you can become playful, and I know that's a word that's really hard for alphas, right? All my tough guys out there, right? But if you can become playful, if you can make yourself interesting, if you can become a person of value to this unquantifiable variable, then you have a better chance that you just might attract it. If you can make yourself non-threatening, if you can make your intentions interesting, if you can entertain the interest, if you can hold the attention, then you just may be able to begin the dance. Begin the dance. You move a little bit to them, they move a little bit away from you, you move a little bit away from them, they move a little bit towards you. The interplay, communication. Communication, you may have to talk another language. Coding, systems, marketing. You might have to speak another language than you're used to. It's probably not going to take the same thing that it took to get into a car to get on a horse. It's an unquantifiable variable. It's something different. Now watch this. This is a beautiful thing. This is the amazing thing, right? Let's just say for imagination purposes, let's just say you're able to touch it. Come close enough just to touch it. Rippling muscle, sinew, bone, hoof like brick. You're able to touch it. And it doesn't snap on you and just break you in half. You can feel the force. You can feel the power. And let's just say that you're able to, because think about it. If there's no saddle, there's nothing for you to, there's no stair stool, there's no steps for you to just climb your way onto this monster and behemoth. So how do you do it? How do you do that thing? Do you know horses will come down for you if you know how to act right? Horses will bow their head and kind of bend down for you to allow you to mount it. But you got to come a certain kind of way. You got to approach it a different kind of way. You got to use a different brain, a different mindset than force and torque and speed. You cannot force yourself on this thing. This work of art has to allow you to succeed. Business cannot be forced, but you can use power. And if you're curious, and if you make yourself interesting, and if you know how to yield, you can harness the forces of business. You can harness the force of the horse. But this dance can take months. It's likely not going to happen overnight. Now, can you fast forward the process? Yes. But do you have to be patient if it doesn't buck when you want it to? Do you understand? Because you don't control this. And those of us who are accustomed to having 100% control, 100% autonomy, 100% clock in, this is how it's supposed to go. When you're reading from, there's no manual for this in the wild. And Bobby's right. Bobby wasn't wrong. The best thing that you could do is find a specialist. But what if there is none? What if there is none and it's a real life and death situation? How do you harness the force of business? How do you harness the force of the only thing that can really save your life or take you where you want to go? Now, in branding and brand you, we teach to brand you, not what you do. We teach you to harness your internal power to make yourself interesting to the outside element, not to force yourself on your ideal client, but to attract them to you, to become magnetic in the marketplace. And then to ask questions, open-ended questions, so you can find out more, so you can do like a discovery process and learn what the needs are, so you can fulfill the needs. Service first. Because if you can provide the horse with value, you understand, Bobby? If you can find the food that the horse wants, or the source that the horse wants, if you can find something that the horse finds valuable, then you have a much better chance of the horse being interested in you, and there being value in them allowing you to yield or wield. See, yield turns to wield. Most people want to wield before they yield. That's how they get their back broke in business. This is the Breakfast with the Brand. We'll be right back. I want you to think this morning. It's very important that you know yourself to the highest degree possible, because it's through knowing ourselves that we're able to know other people. You are the most important person in the room, and the better that you know yourself, the better that you're able to communicate to others. So you're not only playing the game knowing who you are, but you're also playing the game knowing who everyone else is, so that you're not playing blind.
He's extremely engaging with people. He has a fantastic smile, and he's just a very high energy person.
This is called leadership development. So we have to be independently knowledgeable and considerate to know who we are, so we can more effectively know who other people are. As the leader, it's your responsibility to allocate resources in the right places. If you don't know how to communicate effectively, you're losing the battle. I said Shaan Rais. I'm proud. I said Shaan Rais. Leadership is not the brand they made for us.
Listen, he brought fire, heat. He didn't hold back.
20 years down the line, what I could sell, why not serve first? Service over salary. Branding like a leader closes the gap for people who want branding. Speaking like a leader closes the gap for people who are nervous about speaking. If Steve Jobs would have speculated, we wouldn't have Apple.
He changed lives. He helped people open up their business and start their business.
We are the brand. Some people say, Shaan, should I quit my job? Mentally, yes.
As a speaker too, to be able to learn from him and watch him and you know, game respects game. And I want to have that much game someday.
The right client, pay $500,000 for what you do. You have to be bold in your beliefs.
He has been an amazing asset to this event and a pleasure to work with. Very captivating, collaborative, worked very well with the audience.
I want to help you. Put a 0 behind your number, right?
The session was great. How he is online, virtually, he is even more phenomenal in person.
Be the face of change that you want to see. Stop asking questions and start giving demands.
The entire team has just been absolutely incredible. They are a joy to work with. They go above and beyond.
Give yourself a round of applause. Yes, yes, yes. Now, for those of us who are accustomed to the wild, right? If you're in a marriage, you're accustomed to the wild. If you've ever been in a relationship, you're accustomed to the wild. You're familiar with the wild and the unquantifiable variable at times. So what happens? The interplay, the curiosity, the being a person of value, the finding out what attracts them by what they find attractive and by not what we find attractive. The sacrifice, the service, the yielding, the looking to the side, not letting your true intentions be known from the very beginning. The dance, the courting, the hope, the service, the sacrifice, the value. What do they value? The asking of questions, the interplay. If you do this the right way, then you will yield and they will allow you to wield. However, if you introduce yourself by making your intentions known from the door and trying to use force instead of power and trying to attract them too fast or too aggressively, what you'll actually do is repel them. And you'll never be able to wield. I'm still talking about branding for those of you who I've lost back at the beginning of the conversation. Not only am I talking about branding, but I'm talking about branding. I'm talking about leadership as well. Because people have to allow you to lead them. You can't force leadership upon anyone, not even yourself. You know, when you try to break a habit, it usually doesn't work that way. You don't break something that's been trained or embedded in you. What you do is you yield and you begin the process of understanding. And once beginning the process of understanding, then you can figure it out. Same thing with the horse in the wild, same thing with the business. But until you can wield, for all of my alphas out there, first you have to yield. Now, there's a lot of different schools of thought that talk about this, the yin and the yang, the masculine, the feminine energies. There's a lot of things going on here. This is why I say business is a spiritual game, because I'm constantly asked questions by those who tend to try to use force to break their way into business. And they end up breaking their business, breaking their relationships, breaking their health, and breaking their finances. Bobby, what is your take on this analogy that we've used thus far this morning?
Man, it's like Sidney Poitier or something like that. Like, if you just imagine somebody out there. I used to watch old westerns with my grandmother, and Sidney Poitier was one of the main actors back then. And what's really interesting is once they get on the horse, it's like game over. It's so interesting. It's because it's like when they're looking and their feet are hurting and they're running out of water and they're dry and they're just like in this heat, it's like bad. And they don't know, they start seeing mirages, like they start seeing revenue that's not there. Ask me how I know. Right? You start seeing little water pods and then you stumble on it. It's more dirt than you just left. And you realize that if you can just get on the horse, then it's game over. Like, you got the saddle, you got the arrows, you got the bow, depending on your style. You can do rifle over the arm, riding like that to the side. So what I'm saying is that, like, the cowboy or cowgirl, so to speak, the entrepreneur in this case, that's wandering through the wilderness has, I think, one core objective, and that is attracting a stallion that they can yield to so that they can wield with. And I think that's interesting, is that the horse, when engaging with it properly, there's almost like this unity. I think they call them equestrians. And it's almost like they ride with the horse. The horse kind of feels and leans and they jump together. It's like the horse and the entrepreneur, or in our case, the cowboy and the horse, become one and the same. The entrepreneur and the marketplace become one and the same. And then what Robert Greene calls the dynamic begins to unfold. You can feel now the dynamic of the desert, of the marketplace, so on and so forth. So I think this is super interesting.
Very good. Now, For those of us who have been in marriages, been in business, been in relationships, do you have to consistently yield? Or can you move into a place where you forcefully yield or forcefully wield? And the answer to that is definitely. So once you have made yourself of interest, once you have been able to attract or subdue momentarily enough for you to mount this force of nature, you can't just force your way into the sunset or just force your way into 7 figures or force your way into a 9-figure beast or behemoth of an organizational structure. It doesn't work that way. So it's a constant yield to wield relationship. It's a constant give and take. It's a constant ebb and flow. And if you've ever been thrown from a horse, you know what I'm talking about. If a car ever flew out of control, then you know what I'm talking. If you've ever been divorced, if you ever had your heart broken, if you ever lost a job or was fired, if you ever thought everything was going right and it couldn't go wrong and then something snapped, you ever hurt yourself in sports or injured yourself in the gym or in real life combat, then you know what I'm talking about. It's a constant dance. It's a constant interplay of energy. Like Bobby said, the horse and the rider become one. The man and the woman become one in marriage until they're not. Until there's a dis-ease in the body even. Because you no longer yield and you try to force your way through. You no longer respect the power, the real force of what you're dealing with. Business is a real force. Relationships are a real force. Sales is a real force. Life is a real force. And people don't understand it. And this is why they learn a little, they grow a little, then they get broken a little. Then they got to heal a little. And in some cases, they got to do a lot of healing. And then when they come out of healing, what happens? They're a lot more gingerly, aren't they? They're a lot more humble. They're a lot more aware of the power of the forces that be. And they approach this thing differently. It's called maturity. They approach this thing differently because they've laid up in a sling for a little while, or they've healed their arms. So now they know, watch this, Bobby. Now they know to turn when they punch. Now they know to turn when they punch and to lean into it with their shoulder as opposed to just try to snap it and think that once it leaves the shoulder socket, it's going to take care of itself. It's not. See, a well thought out plan is only effective through execution, but you got to be mindful throughout the entire thing. So you get how many of us, put a 1 in the chat, how many of us have ever gotten what we thought we wanted and then messed it up? How many of us have worked very hard to get the promotion and then not valued the promotion or valued the people that gave us the promotion or valued the raise? We said, if I could only make this amount of money. And then we get given the opportunity and our yield turns to wield. Our hunger turns into humility and then turns into haughtiness. Our submission and humility turns into pride and proudness. And then we get broken like a toothpick and have to pick ourselves up, put ourselves back together, and approach it again. if we still have the heart to, or the spirit to, because sometimes in these situations, your heart and your spirit get broke. And in the case that I just stated, in the case that I just gave you, the analogy that I just gave you, you can die in the wilderness, man. If the horse is no longer present, if you play yourself and the horse leaves, now you stuck on the range with no way out. No water. No, nothing to eat, like nothing to forage. See, if you do this the wrong way, guys, if you do this the wrong way, then you're stuck. I want you to always stay mindful of why you do what you do, and what you do, why you do, and who you do what you do for. Because if you keep the who in mind, then the what and the how become a lot easier. It'll be a lot harder, Bobby, to go from yield to wield disrespectfully. When you keep the who in mind and the why you started in mind and the who you're trying to get back to. We don't start businesses just to have a business. We start businesses to fix things, to solve things, to empower people. But what happens when we get in business is we get proud. It's the same thing with the job. We get the job and then we get proud. We get the promotion and then we get proud and we start looking down on people like I belonged here the whole time and I can't. Now I've been given power. Watch what happens now. And you begin to believe that it's yours by force as opposed to by power. See, there's power in humility, there's power in selfless service, and there's power in leadership. There's disempowerment in pride, there's disempowerment in haughtiness, and a sense of deserving, and a sense of expectation, and a sense of entitlement. That's the word that I'm looking for. Entitlement. For those of us who have loved and lost, or opened and then had to close businesses, fell in and fell out of grace, broken something. Look, listen, guys, like it's so real that you'll look at your back differently once it's been broken or sprained. Like you'll look at your legs differently. You'll appreciate your legs. You'll be like, hold on, nah, I'm not going to run this fast for no reason. There has to be a real good reason for me to. I've done this before. Bobby, you was talking about that condition you went into. What's the condition that you were talking about the other couple weeks ago?
Rhabdo.
Yeah. What caused it?
So rhabdo happens when you are overexerting your muscles and then the lactic acid taps out.
Okay, and you've triggered it a couple different times, right?
Correct.
How would you like to trigger it today on the call?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. So you've learned from it. This is the problem, guys. A lot of times, watch this. A lot of times we'll yield, then wield, get broken, heal, yield again, and then try to forcefully wield again until we get broken again. And it's a cycle that takes place over and over again until you become mature in business. Now, this is the difference between success and sustainable success. Because you can subdue the horse, you can make the horse, you can't really subdue, you can't force the horse, you can't do that. But what you can do is you can humble yourself, you can attract the horse, you can, what's the word I'm looking for? You can make yourself appealing for the horse to allow you to mount. But that's not sustainable unless you continue to make yourself vulnerable, continue to be genuine, ethical, and not a threat. As soon as you shift your intentions, you think the horse doesn't sense it? Of course it does. Of course it does. They have feelings too. They're emotional too. They're beings of spirit too. And anyone who's been in a relationship for any amount of time knows there's ebbs and flows, and there's times when you have to what? Check yourself. So if you're in business and you're not selling, you might need to check yourself. You say, what's wrong with the market? Why isn't the market biting? Nobody has any money. No, they do. But they don't give it to you because they're the horse that you're trying to force your will upon. And they're like, nah, it's not happening. Matter of fact, you get too close, what happens? If you've ever been kicked in the chest by a horse, you know. So you want to, this is so powerful, guys. I promise you, this analogy is so powerful because once you get someone's business, you have to then continue to earn it. Please understand this. A sale in the books is not always a sale in the books. If you shift your service delivery, or you shift the value, the level to which you serve, your value then becomes questionable and you fall out of rapport. Come on, you fall out of rapport. If you fall out of rapport with the horse, you might wake up later on the floor. So if you fall out of rapport with the marketplace, you might find yourself bankrupt. If you find yourself out of rapport in a client consultant relationship, you might find yourself out of a sale. If you find yourself, and shout out to Joel, just had a phenomenal speech. And so I'm gonna relate this to him. If you find yourself out of rapport with an audience, you might find yourself on the wrong side of a speech that could turn into future opportunities, future clients, future contracts, future revenue. But you got to tame the audience first. You got to allow them to allow you to serve them with humility. And then if your humility turns into pride and turns into arrogance, you can immediately lose rapport, which means you immediately lose opportunity, lose revenue, lose future contacts, lose relationships, lose business, lose the opportunity to really be of value. Oh, you're on mute, Bobby. You done lost your voice.
No, like I muted it on my side just because I wanted to make sure nothing came over. I was doing a lot of page flipping over here, but like I've got tons of notes, guys. And one of the things that I wrote down was just once you get someone's business, you must continue to serve. If you fall out of rapport with the market, you may lose your business. That's how I wrote it down. And the reason I wrote it down that way was because it makes me think about how young love. Like, have you ever been like young and in love, and then you like meet someone and you're bobbling all over the place and you just like a little silly looking, awkward, but it's so authentic. It's so genuine. It's so harmless that it almost infects the other individual. They become a little bubbly. They become a little bubbly, and they are like, and they start doing these high-pitched laughs. And then you get into the relationship, and the routine sets in. And like once the routine sets in, it's almost like the laugh isn't as cute as it used to be. The wrinkle over the nose doesn't really excite you like it used to. And now you go to the same restaurants, eating the same thing, and you're back home at the same time. And in business, sometimes it can feel that way, especially when you're doing the setting and closing process, because there are systems to things, and there is a certain way to do things. And I think this analogy is appropriate. You got to keep it spicy. You got to keep it engaging. You got to keep yourself fresh with education. Keep yourself fresh with the community. Keep yourself fresh with ideas, because these ideas and insights and next level approaches to business, I believe, allow us to get into the marketplace and have relationships, because business is a relationship. They call them CRMs, customer relationship management. And I think that's a very important concept. So that's one of the things I wrote down, because I definitely can say I enjoy the closing side of business. I enjoy the execution side of business, but I don't really love, so to speak, the courting side of business. Not my thing. Setting is not really my thing. Aesthetics isn't really my thing. And it's the same way in my actual home. Like, I don't care for going out, getting the roses, lighting the candles, doing the ambiance. I'm like, where are we going? How long is it going to take us to get there? And when are we coming home? And making sure it's good. Like, I do care about the experience, but I'm not the biggest ambiance guy. But I've learned that in business and in marriages and in relationships, like, you got to do both. And I think that's really interesting in the conversation that we've had.
Balance. I can remember when I began, one of my huge coaching offers was balance coaching, because we lose balance many times in the acquisition of that which we want. Whether it's a job, whether it's a raise, whether it's a promotion, whether it's an education level, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a physicality, we hit the weight and then we lose the fervor and desire to maintain it because we attained it when it was a challenge. Just like the relationships, just like the business, when it was a challenge, it's extremely exciting and extremely attractive and something you just must have. It's desirous. It has all of your attention locked on it, all of your focus. You become invincible because it's intense, and your consistency makes you invincible in your quest for success. But then as soon as you lay hands on it, it loses the excitement, because now it's no longer something that you're chasing. It's something that you've attained. And if you don't set another goal, then you lose your fire and you lose your passion. And ultimately you lose the relationship, you lose the sale, or you lose the business, or you lose the opportunity to lead, or you lose the leads and you lose the relationships and the revenue that could come from the speaking event. There's so many different ways to look at this, but this is what I want to say to you real quick before we leave today is yield before you wield, or you'll have to heal if you try to steal. This is The Breakfast with the Brand. We'll see you tomorrow. Let's grow.